It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
You go about your business the same way you have all year. You don't change things. You don't try to create with new slogans at this point or new practice plans. You stay with what has gotten you here. You stay consistent. To me, that's what players want. They want consistency. They want to know what to expect. They want to be in a routine. And so we won't change anything about our routine this week.
You know, I don't know if Mark Kingston did that in jest or with purpose, but it seemed to me like that might have been a shot across the bow to the upstate, maybe bogarting a slogan that may or may not be appropriated to Gamecock football. I'm not saying that I read too much into these things, but it could be something of a statement there made by the Gamecock head coach. Welcome into Sports Talk. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes. It is a Wednesday, the 6th day of June, 6th day of the 6th month, 2018. Continuing to follow the MLB draft, we'll have all the selections of local import coming up. We're going to hear from Matt Kenseth in our second hour. He was out as part of the tire test day at Darlington Raceway. We're going to hear from a couple of members of the Gamecocks as well, as they had their media availability before they leave for Fayetteville. We'll also hear from them later on in this week as well, Mark Kingston and Madison Stokes. And we're going to hear from the Clemson basketball coach, Brad Brownell. He's got 12 guys on the roster, and we assume he might be done, but we'll find out from him whether or not he is done assembling the roster for 2018, trying to get back to the Sweet 16 as his team did for the first time in 21 years. But as we sit here today, Corn, South Carolina making a little bit of history with 10 drafted players on their current roster. That's a high for them in school history, and I tell you, it's further proof to us that while at the beginning part of this year and at parts of the year, we were not necessarily convinced that this team could put things together, but we're seeing now that they always had talent. It was just a matter of getting it all put together.
You can actually throw an 11th in there because former Gamecock John Jones was drafted out of North Greenville, the catcher, in the 32nd round by the A's. But we said throughout the year, even when the Gamecocks hit the skids, lost, 6 in a row, and the record dropped to 20-17, and people were wondering what was going on. And my position was this was not a team that did not have talent. I thought that Chad Holbrook and his staff had left some good players behind. When you went around the lineup and you saw what they had at second, when healthy, and you saw what they had at short and at third, the corner outfield, the center fielder is excellent. Catching got better as Hunter Taylor got better throughout the season. Chris Cullen has not lived up to the expectations as a catcher, and he may end up playing another position should he return next season. But Hunter Taylor got better and better, both offensively and defensively. His percentage of throwing out would-be base stealers was outstanding over the last half of the season. And, of course, the pitching looked good. That seemed to be the strength of the team going into the season. And what they did, besides developing their 3 starters, was really to develop a deep bullpen, both in terms of a middle pen and a back end of the pen. And guys learned their roles. You know, they knew – I think guys kind of knew that, you know, Demurius, who kind of started out as the closer, kind of became the middle guy. Then you had Graham Lawson kind of become that bridge to the closer, and Sawyer Bridges kind of became the closer, though they were all interchangeable. Sometimes Demurius would finish. Sometimes Lawson would finish. But I think when they go to Arkansas this weekend, in a perfect world for South Carolina, if things, you know, work as Mark Kingston would like, you'd get 6 innings out of your starter, and then turn the ball over to Demurius to work maybe the 7th and 8th, and you've got Lawson to maybe work the 8th and 9th, or Bridges to work the 9th to close it out. That would be a perfect scenario, I think, pitching-wise for South Carolina this weekend.
Yeah, and it's interesting as we look towards the weekend. Mark Kingston saying in his media availability today that they are going to stay, at least they assume they're going to stay on turn somewhat, with Hill and Morris starting the first 2 games. And I pressed him on the potential third, because at times, of course, Logan Chapman's been part of the weekend rotation, but against UNC Wilmington, they used Carmen Majinski, and he fared very well pro. And he has the kind of stuff that gets to the next level, but I think much like we've seen over the course of the postseason, it's all about kind of putting it together. He did so. It's about whether or not he could put back-to-back together. He hasn't done that to this point of the season.
Well, the key point to the pitching as a whole is the fact that when you looked at what happened in Greenville, suddenly they weren't given a lot of free passes. They gave a few, but not some that really caused teams to explode on South Carolina, and they were able to keep that in check. I would think probably if you're South Carolina, if you did have a perfect world, Cohen, if you had a lead and you go to your bullpen, and we all know that the team that's the home team, if they're behind, that, you know, that little thing in the throat starts to tighten on you when you fall behind late. We saw Florida almost buckle. Georgia did buckle when they fell behind. So, you know, South Carolina, they have to be aggressive early, in my opinion, offensively, and then be stingy with the walks.
Getting those last outs in a super regional game, they are tough.
Yes.
Especially if it's to close it out to go to Omaha. If it's a close ball game, getting and you're the, you know, the home, you're on the mound, you're in the bottom of the 9th, you're on the mound, you got the lead. We've seen it so many times. I mean, to me, one of the best sporting events I've ever covered in the state of South Carolina goes back to the year that South Carolina rallied to beat Miami in the Super Regional in Columbia at Sarge Fry Field. And they had to go out and score and rally. I think it was the top of the 9th when they staged their rally. Miami was the home team, and the Gamecocks had to go out in the bottom of the 9th as the visiting team and close it out. And the place was going absolutely wild, pitch by pitch. And that's just the sort of buildup and pressure that comes with trying to close out a super and get to Omaha. I would expect that to be the case. Now, the problem is that hooping and hollering is going to be for the Arkansas kids and not for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and you really don't get as much of the regional type travel like we saw going up to Greenville. You can speak to the fact that there were a lot of fans who made the trip across the border. It's not going to necessarily be that kind of atmosphere. It's going to be a lot of just friends and family from South Carolina's perspective. And, of course, once you get to Omaha, again, it turns into those who make the pilgrimage and those who don't, who are watching back on television. But, you know, in my mind, South Carolina has to do enough creating of their own energy and creating of their own atmosphere. It almost kind of feels like, you know, with those basketball tournaments around Thanksgiving and Christmas and around the holidays where, you know, you see them play in these almost ballrooms and you have to kind of create your own energy. That's the challenge now for South Carolina. But when just being around them today, Mark Kingston talks about, you know, being in that business-like approach, being in that, you know, keeping as much of the things the same. I mean, they've already sent ahead the truck with the pitching machines. They're already going and putting that on the road and trying to, again, normalize this atmosphere as much as possible. I think they've done that about as well as anybody can to this point of the season and during this part of the postseason, especially because it showed in their play last weekend.
Yeah, it's amazing what a mental thing the pitching machine has become.
Yes.
For this team. They had that extended period on the road when they were away from it, and they flailed away at the plate. And, you know, when the players were talking about it and saying we miss hitting off our pitching machine, I was like, oh, come on, that's a crock. But there must be some truth to it because they hit better when they've had a chance to face that robot.
Well, I'm convinced that you have success, you have to have two things in an athletic program: a pitching machine and a soft ice cream machine. Those are the two things you must have. But getting back to your point about being on the road, I think that can be a plus for some teams that's mentally tough, especially a team with a bunch of seniors like South Carolina. That us against the world mentality that seems to just, enhance your concentration level when you're on the road.
We're going to go over the picks from the draft today, but just want to point out a local player was just taken a couple of moments ago. 36th round, Matt Beard, catcher from Coastal Carolina, to the Orioles. Sorry about that, Matt. 36th round, pick number 1075.
Yeah, we will run all the way through the local picks of those schools that we follow here on South Carolina Radio Network in our next segment. Again, we're going to talk at the bottom of the hour to Clemson basketball coach Brad Brownell, some of the news and notes to pass along, including South Carolina has found out who they will play during the conference season. We'll run through those as well for you. Hear from Mark Kingston, Madison Stokes, Matt Kenston. Also, it's an SC Wild evening, so Captain Billy Dunn will be on in our final half hour to talk about the things in the outdoors here on a very loaded Wednesday Sports Talk.
What was the name of it?
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Whether you need a quick getaway or a relaxing stay at a beach resort, a vacation loan from Founders can make it happen. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/vacation. If you're not a Founders member, visit relaxjoinfounders.com to see if you qualify for a membership. You were in the PD earlier today, went to Darlington Raceway. You said you stopped for some barbecue. Do you want to give some love for the barbecue you ate?
Watford's Barbecue in downtown, well, not right in downtown, just past downtown Bishopville, heading out to I-20. Quite good, quite delicious. Enjoyed it. Had a great time at Darlington, as always. Got a chance. As I was leaving, Daniel Suarez was turning some laps. And so I walked out onto the end of pit road, out near the track, to watch him go by. I wanted to get the sensation of him coming down what is the front stretch, coming out of 4, going into 1. Wanted to hear how he was hitting his marks, and was watching the tire wear and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm standing there, and he's out there on the track by himself at that time. And so he's coming around, and he's coming down the front stretch, and I can't hear anything because it's really loud. And all of a sudden, I look to my right, and here comes Paul Menard coming down pit road towards me.
Right at you.
At speed, yeah. Yeah, he's coming out of the garage, and, of course, he's going out there to get some laps in. And I'm standing in the middle of the exit of pit road where it enters onto the track. And, of course, I'm in his way, okay? He's not in my way. I'm in his way. And, of course, I see him coming. He's 100 yards away. I happened to just look. I didn't hear him because the noise from Suarez's car was too loud. I couldn't hear Menard coming down the pit road, and I looked to my right, and I see this lime green thing coming at me. I quickly got out of the way. And
so you're telling me I have to go call and cancel a check to Paul Menard now?
Yeah, he missed. Yeah, he missed. And Dennis Worden, the PR guy there at Darlington, watched the whole thing. Of course, he did nothing to try to warn me that here comes a car down pit road. They wanted to see me get slammed. But I got out of the way. I survived it. But I will say this. He should have been docked for speeding on pit road. He did not adhere to the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
They did not. I thought it was 55. Is it 35
It depends on the track. I think Darlington being so short on the pit road, I'm sure it's 35.
So you're telling me they don't have horns on those cars?
They do not have horns
on those cars. I wonder how that would work.
That was pretty interesting to look up and see this thing coming at you faster than you would like.
So here's what we have for draft day number 3 inside the Major League Baseball first-year player draft. They are currently twiddling around in round number 38. We'll let you know if there's any update to that, but this might be as complete a list as we can give you here. It started out, Gamecocks, as we said, they have 10 current players who were taken today. That's the best in their program's history. 2001 and 2002, they had 8 apiece in those two. Graham Lawson was selected in the 12th round by the Washington Nationals, 371 overall. L.T. Tolbert, 13th round by the Diamondbacks. Rich Chapman goes to the Nationals in the 17th round for South Carolina. Jonah Bride, who was a senior, 23rd round of the MLB draft to the Oakland Athletics. Sorry, Jonah. Catcher Hunter Taylor, selected by the Chicago Cubs in the 23rd round of the Major League Baseball draft. We're allowed to have some levity with some of these teams who aren't very good, right? Are we allowed to do that? Right-handed pitcher Eddie Demiri is taken in the 27th round by the Cincinnati Reds. I don't know if he's looking forward to pitching in that ballpark or not. And Josiah Seitler, taken in the 12th round of the MLB draft by the Cincinnati Reds. Blaze Alexander of IMG Academy, also a signee for the Gamecocks, taken with pick 339 in the 11th round of the Major League Baseball draft.
All right, some of the others for Clemson. Jake Higginbotham, left-hander, taken by the Braves in the 11th round. Also from the Tigers, outfielder Drew Wharton, taken by the Cubs. That was in round 30. And a former Tiger, left-hander Mitchell Miller, taken in round 31 by the Angels. And a Clemson signee, David Sharp, right-handed pitcher, taken by the Pirates in the 34th round. As far as some of the other players around the state taken today, and they began the draft in round 11 today. Tanner Myatt, a right-hander from Florence, Darlington, Czech, Flodar, going to the Yankees in the 11th round.
You gonna send him some of your pinstripes there?
I think I might. Good for him. Jason Billis, right-hander from Coastal Carolina, to the White Sox in round 13. It was Evan Sisk, left-hander from the College of Charleston, to the Cardinals in round 16. You had outfielder Connor Grant of North Greenville to the Marlins in round 21. Peyton Smith, outfielder from Strom Thurmond, to the Padres round 22. This guy is 6'5" and 250 pounds, I think, from what I saw. Big guy.
Huge.
And we had Blake Whitney, right-hander from the USC Upstate, to the Cubs, round 24. Mitch Spires, Winthrop shortstop, to the Angels, round 28. Garrett McDaniels, left-hander from PD Academy, to the Marlins in round 30. John Jones, the one-time Gamecock from North Greenville, catcher, to the A's in round 32. And most recently, Matt Beard, catcher from Coastal Carolina, to the Orioles in round 36. So that's what we've got so far. I think we've got everybody connected to the states in one form or another.
You mentioned John Jones as well?
I just did.
Okay. Just want to make sure that we got him in.
Mm-hmm.
Made sure he gets his recognition. Again, they're right now at pick 30 or pick 1141 in the 38th round. They can go as basically as long as they want. Sometimes they stop at 40. Sometimes teams start passing on guys. And so if there is another one that comes out during this time, we will let you know. The thing that I'm always fascinated by, Corn, is the fact that this process has changed so much over the years. They used to they used to make you wait all the way almost till the end of the year before you could sign. Now they've sped that whole process up and basically only given you a month to basically decide whether or not you want to go with an MLB team or go back to college or go from high school to college. And the thing I think that is so difficult is for these teams like South Carolina who are still playing. You have to weigh this decision alongside, oh, by the way, they're preparing for a super regional for their team that they're currently playing on. Yeah,
it's tough. You got so much on your mind if you're still playing, and now you got to deal with the draft. But what you do is you have to compartmentalize, and I'm sure that's what Mark Kingston told his players. I'm sure that's what players drafted by the remaining teams in the supers, what their coaches are saying. All right, guys, enjoy this moment, but now set it aside. You'll have plenty of time for negotiations. And in this day and age, you know, what do? They tell their agent, okay, here's my figure. Now you go and work it out with the team and just let me know as you get close enough to it to where we have something to talk about. So they can focus on their baseball now moving forward, and they can let their agent handle the negotiations part and deal with the financial side of it.
Is it too long? Because, I mean, I'm seeing in the 35th round or 33rd round, the Astros took Carlos Correa's brother. I think the A's took Stephen Piscotty's brother in the 38th round. I'm seeing a lot of local high school connections, like Kansas City to get out of Columbia, Missouri. And again, we're seeing a lot of these, I would say, quote-unquote favors being done. I mean, Mike Piazza was one of the most famous quote-unquote favors because he was Tommy Lasorda's godson. So, I mean, are we in a situation now where this process almost is too long?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Oh, you got to field all these minor league teams.
Yeah, all these minor league teams. You got bodies. You need.
Listen, some of these guys are going to be career minor leaguers.
Yes.
They all think they're going to be up in the show one day, but
I feel bad for them.
The majority will be chasing that dream and spend their entire career in the minors.
Just having been around them, though, I mean, I would say that a lot of these guys who I covered when I was doing minor league baseball, 89, 90% of them didn't make the major leagues. I mean, I can count to you on the hands and on my fingers and toes of the guys I actually covered who were major league players, partially because I worked for two very bad organizations. But that's just, well, that's one thing led to another. But in my mind, again, not that it's too long, but in my opinion, I think that so much of this, again, it puts a lot of undue pressure on some of these youngsters because, again, a 38th round pick, that kind of money, like you said yesterday, it means different things to different people.
Mm-hmm. I think the key point is, even if some of these guys don't make it, you might end up like Mark Kingston, play a few years in the minors, and you end up being a major college coach because you learn things along the way.
Some people become career baseball people,
right,
in some form or another. Maybe not on the field, but they become coaches, they become scouts, they become general managers.
That scout life is tough, though.
Well, they love baseball.
They do.
They do love their baseball.
We will transition drastically to talk a little hoops with the Clemson head basketball coach, Brad Brownell, who joins us next. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network, as we to you on a Wednesday, is now time to talk a little hoops, Corn, with the Clemson head man who's on our line right now.
Always good to have Clemson basketball coach Brad Brownell with us here on Sports Talk. Coach, good evening, sir. How are you?
Doing well. Hope you guys are.
Yeah. How's your summer off to at this point?
Well, it's fine. We just got our guys back, so we're kind of back at it here with some skill work in the gym and getting them organized with class and organizing for July recruiting. So still pretty busy. Got camp next week after, so we've got a lot of things going still.
Well, you got a group of 5 newcomers, including a couple of transfers, 3 high school guys, a couple of transfers coming in this class. How do you look at the group that you're bringing in, Newman, Tyson, Jamison, Bear, and White, to join what you have coming back?
Yeah, I like our group. Good size and length. A good mix, as you mentioned, with 3 high school players and 2 transfers. Javen White graduated 3 years from Oral Roberts, so he's got 2 years left to play for us and can play right away. So a bright young man, good front court athlete, and rebounder, can block a few shots. So excited about having him join our team this year with Elijah in the front court. Jonathan Bear, as you mentioned, transfer from UNC Asheville, got to sit out a year, but that'll be okay because we'll be losing Elijah. He's a long kid, 6'9", and needs to put on some weight, but the year off will be good for him for that. He can make some threes and stretch the floor, and we just think he has a really high ceiling. He's a guy that can do a lot of different things and dribble the ball pretty well for his size. So a guy that you can play away from the basket and play with a lot of different players. And then our freshman class is good. John Newman is an extremely talented kid that big-time winner, won 3 state championships in North Carolina, played for all-time winningest high school coach in the state, Freddie Johnson there. And he's a good athlete, 6'5" and 195 pounds. Really plays both ends of the floor. He can dribble the ball. He's got a good mid-range game, very good defender, athletic. Super excited about him. Think he'll have a chance as a freshman to play a good bit for us. And then the other 2 guys, Hunter Tyson is kind of a big forward that can do a little bit of everything. He can make some threes. He's got to get stronger, but came in at 210 pounds, so pretty good size, and at 6'7", and scored a lot of points in high school. So he's used to scoring. We like that, and it's been good here the first couple of days on campus. And then Trey Jemison is a big 6'10", 240-pound freshman that we think is going to be a good player. He's physical. He's tough. He's very smart. Did have knee surgery this summer, so he's going to be out all summer. Might hold him back a little bit, but just a really, really talented young man.
Clemson head coach Brad Brownell joining us on the men's basketball side to talk. You could argue, though, the best signees are guys who were part of your team last year coming back with Shelton Mitchell and Marquise Reed. What did they learn from their NBA draft combine experience? And more importantly, how much does that impact your team going forward?
Well, there's no question getting those 2 guys back is tremendous help to us. We're super excited about it. Just the way the process works anymore, it's very difficult for the programs because these kids can take it down to the end of May, and really you lose 2 good players like that at the end of May. There just aren't enough guys out there at the time to kind of keep it going, and it's very difficult to have your roster in place to where you lose a major player or 2, your leading scorers, and not feel some difficulty there. But we were fortunate those guys came back. I think they learned a lot in the last month. They really found out that there's some things they got to continue to get better at. They got to get better at 2-point scoring, finishing plays around the rim. I think the NBA game more than ever now is really analyzing how well you defend and individual defense with all the switching, and guys at the guard position are being asked to try to guard LeBron James. And, it's the size and length now is what they really love at the NBA level because they love switching. They love being able to have guys that can play multiple positions. I think our guys shoot the ball very well, and so that's an area of strength. And they just got to continue to work to have maybe a quicker release. But I think it was good for them. I think they're hungry and motivated, and certainly we're coming off an unbelievable year where we go to the Sweet 16, and hopefully those guys are going to lead us to some great success again this year.
Looking at your newcomers, it seems that you've added a lot more length on the wings, on the perimeter. Was that by design? You're looking maybe to pick up the intensity, maybe kind of clog the passing lanes a little bit more with that length?
Yeah, you'd love to get length when you can, length and skill, and it's hard to find guys that can do both. But we certainly, we feel like John Newman is a rare freshman that's going to be able to do that at 6'5", 6'4.5", with great athleticism and a guy who can make some shots. And Jonathan Bear, I think, will be able to do some of those things in the future. He's got to get a little stronger. He's obviously in a sit-out situation. Hunter Tyson might be able to do a little bit of that. He's a guy that can make shots and is 6'7". And we lost David Scarr was a guy who we really didn't anticipate losing. He was a transfer that came in and graduated, played 1 year for us, had 1 year left. And, but being a Croatian, he wanted to go home and start his pool career and start to make money. So I think he was a little bit homesick here in the last 6 months or so, and just felt like, what, I've got my degree, I've been on a Sweet 16 team. I think I'm going to go ahead and kind of start my pro career. So I understand that. But he was 6'8" long, and really losing him and Dante Grantham, 2 6'8" guys, we knew we needed to add length to our perimeter.
Visiting with Brad Brown now, Clemson basketball coach. Back to the recruiting. By my count, around the state in the 2018 class, it looks like we had at least 5 guys who were big-time recruits, all of which went out of the state. And so my question for you and would be for Frank Martin as well. I mean, I know it's not from a lack of effort for you guys. I know you scout them and recruit them, but they all decided for one reason or another to go outside the state. And 2019 looks like a great year in state. So what is it that – I mean, you made a run this past season. Frank made the run the previous year. What do y'all do to get these guys to stay home?
Well, I think the one thing is we certainly both have very good programs and have shown that if you're a young man in the state of South Carolina, you can have success in all ways. You can get drafted into the NBA. Both schools have had kids drafted into the NBA. Both schools have had great NCAA tournament success in the last couple of years. I think the misnomer is that I don't think that Frank and I are recruiting every one of those kids. No. And I think there's a misnomer that he and I are both trying to recruit all those kids. There are certain kids in this state that we certainly are trying to recruit that fit our program, our needs that year. And then there are some that Frank's recruiting. And sometimes we're recruiting a couple of them that are the same, and we're recruiting against each other. There are certain times we're recruiting somebody they're not. They're recruiting somebody we're not. We're both going to get listed as recruiting them all, just because that's the way it is with players in any state. Any player is going to say that. And I think it's a situation where, it's frustrating occasionally when there are some good players that you're recruiting in the state, and for whatever reason they decide to go elsewhere. But at the same time, we both have had enough success and been finding players that are good players in our state in the past and outside our state that have come in and helped us do big things. And I think, both of us are going to recruit a bunch of good players in the future and feel like we'll have a chance to get the ones that are the right fit for our programs.
By our count, you return 7 scholarship players, you bring in 5. Do you plan on using that 13th on somebody existing or getting another guy in there?
Yeah, you know what? Just kind of playing that day to day. I think we look at it that way. You never really know whether you're going to use it. There's somebody that comes along that you feel good about and can help your team either for the immediate year or for the future. We've had some success sitting some kids out and kind of putting them in our system, getting them used to our system, how we do things, and getting them ingrained in our culture. We've done that some, but at the same time, if we feel like, hey, you know what, we'd rather hold it and take it to the 2019 class and have another scholarship in 19, that's fine too. I think we're in a position now with Marquise and Shelton coming back that we feel good about the team we have. And if we need to go forward with the team we have, we're fine. And if there's something that changes, we'll address it if we see something we like.
Coach, thanks very much. Be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Thanks again to Clemson and Brad Brownell for joining us. We'll have that interview posted for you at SportsTalkSC.com at some point within the hour. There was a draftee that went off the board while we were talking to the coach, Corn.
Cody Smith, right-hander from Charleston Southern, the latest, 39th round by the Pirates, number 1164. And now they are just about to wrap up the 39th round. 2 more picks to go there. Then I think they'll wrap it up in round 40.
So we'll keep you abreast of what's going on. And again, we will also have all of the selections, again, of local import, high school, college, and the like when we bring that to you at SportsTalkSC.com. Mark Kingston and the Gamecock baseball team had their final media availability while they sit here stateside before they head to Deliverance Country in Arkansas. And here's a little bit of what Mark Kingston had to say about that opening series with Arkansas, which seems like eons ago.
Well, both teams really pitched well that weekend. The scores were very low. I believe it was 3-2, 2-0, and 3-0. So there were tough conditions to hit in that weekend. It was very cold. It was very rainy most of that weekend. So to me, it should be a much different series. The weather will be warmer. I would guess the ball will carry much better. So I think you'll see a little bit more offense this weekend.
Mark, I know it's early, but do you anticipate the starters lining up kind of like they did last weekend?
Most likely. We'll make that final decision here soon, but I think most likely we'll line it up the same way.
I know at this stage it doesn't matter who you play, you just want to get to Omaha, but is there an advantage, disadvantage to having played somebody that knows you so well and vice versa?
No, I don't think so. I think they know us, we know them, and it's just a matter of who plays the best baseball. I don't think there's any edge for either side in terms of having played 4 games already together.
Mark, for you guys, obviously it's the third day of the draft and kids are on their phones and they're looking, and naturally, I mean, that's their future. How do you kind of take the focus away from the draft, or do you not try to take the focus away from the draft these couple of days?
No, I don't think you can show these kids that all you care about is South Carolina baseball and winning games. I think you need to, as a coach and as a program, understand that's a part of the process. That's one of the reasons why they come to play for staffs and programs, to help get to that point someday. So we're not going to minimize the importance of the draft. It's very important to these kids, and we're going to support them. Once the draft is over, then and the dust is settled, then we can kind of take a step back and all refocus on playing our best baseball as a team this weekend. But we're here to support these guys and help them chase their dreams for pro baseball. And so when it's the right time and guys get drafted in the right spots for them, we're going to support that, obviously.
What have you seen, or at least what did you see Monday from Carmen, and does that performance kind of inch him? And I'm not asking you to predict the future, but does that performance kind of inch him ahead of Logan in your eyes for a potential decisive game start if that happens?
His last 2 starts now have been really good for Carmen, both in the SEC tournament and then this past weekend. He was really good. So Logan and Carmen have both been very important freshmen for us all year, and they will continue to be. We're not ready to name that Game 3 starter yet, but based on how Carmen has been pitching as of late, it might lean that way, but they're both extremely important for us.
How do you prepare this team, and how do you get the guys to play this weekend as if it's hard to say, but a normal SEC series, obviously with so much on the line?
Well, you go about your business the same way you have all year. You don't change things. You don't try to create with new slogans at this point or new practice plans. You stay with what has gotten you here. You stay consistent. To me, that's what players want. They want consistency. They want to know what to expect. They want to be in a routine. And so we won't change anything about our routine this week.
Just circling back to the draft a little bit, I know there's been some contention about when to have the MLB draft, with it being right in the middle of the NCAA tournament. What's your opinion on that? And do you kind of like where it falls right now?
I mean, I would like the draft to go so guys don't have to, be on their phone during a game. The game we were watching the other night, I think the Ole Miss pitcher found out during the game that he'd been drafted. The Florida player had, same way. I think the Major League Baseball has tried to improve it some. And I think this past weekend we had some rain and there were some really late games going on at about the same time. I think their intention is to try to not have them both going on at the same time. I just think it's, for the most part, Major League Baseball and college baseball have worked very well together. I just think there's always ways to try to make sure we improve the process.
That's Mark Kingston, the Deliverance Country comment, by the way, made in jest, because I know we have some Arkansas fans who are listening on our Periscope. Careful, I know. It's 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Let's go to Clark in Greenwood. Clark, what's going on? You're on Sports Talk. How are you? Go ahead, Clark. Clark, turn your radio down. Clark, what's up?
Hey, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I got a question about high school, pros, minor leagues. Okay, for instance, if a kid elects to go in the minor leagues out of high school, if he goes to the minor leagues and it doesn't work out, can he go back to college? Can he play college baseball like a few years down the road?
No, because once you leave, you believe you surrender your amateur status.
Okay, well, I got another question for you.
You can come back and play another
sport.
sport.
You can come back and play another sport like Hayden Hurst did.
Right.
Right. Okay. So can he still go to like these tryouts and try out for the pros again? Just say he blossoms in 4 or 5 years and just becomes the player nobody thought he was going to become.
You mean a minor leaguer who maybe flames out early and then goes back to a tryout? Yeah.
Right. She keeps working out and then goes to a tryout.
Absolutely. There's no barring of a professional baseball player if it doesn't work. Say, for example, you're a pitcher and you go into the minors out of high school and 2 or 3 years in, you blow out your arm or something, get injured, whatever, you can't pitch anymore. You go and work on your game, become a hitter, and go to a tryout camp. They have tryout camps, all over the country.
Yep.
Scouts are always looking. There's no limitation in professional baseball for a scout to find you somewhere, an American Legion game, summer league, high school game, college. They find you.
Fantasy camp.
Yeah, really. And you're a free agent. They can pretty much sign you on the spot, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any limitations as to when or when not they can sign you.
As long as you're not property of a team, they can sign you whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Recruiting for you.
Recruiting.
Sir. You have recruiting.
I have recruiting. You ready for it now?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do the recruiting. First of all, DJ Daniel, defensive back, a prime USC target out of Milledgeville, Georgia Military Academy. He was in Columbia Monday and Tuesday, and he was there today too, working out for the Gamecocks. Spent a lot of time with Will Muschamp and Travaris Robinson. He said he really enjoyed being in Columbia for the first time and got a chance to see the city and the campus and liked everything. And he was going to meet with Travaris Robinson one more time this afternoon before departing, but he was not going to commit, and nothing has happened as far as we know. He is a native of Georgia, and he visited Athens Saturday and Sunday. The Dogs offered him, and that was big to him as well. He met with Kirby Smart, and he met with Mel Tucker, the DC there in Athens. He's going back to Georgia June 15th. He's going to Kentucky Thursday, Friday, Tennessee on June 22nd, all unofficial. He plans to take an official to USC before the season. No favorite at this point. USC likes him as a corner and as a nickel. Now, the commitment Clemson got from DeMonte Capehart, the 2020 defensive lineman from Hartsville, and talking with his coach, Jeff Calabrese, last night to get more information on him. He says he's a tremendous player who should fit right in on Clemson's defensive line, explosive, strong. He's still growing in terms of his technique because he is young. He's only 16 years old. I mean, Cat's got 2 more years of high school ball. And he said if you look at Clemson's D-line, he's just the kind of player that they have signed on their defensive line in recent years. And Capehart is 6'5", 275. Let's see. Defensive back Major Williams of Fort Myers, Florida, was offered by USC at camp yesterday. And 2020 offensive lineman Justin Rogers of Oak Park, Michigan, has Clemson in his list of 13. One-time USC target, offensive lineman Jalen Humphreys, who's out of Georgia, committed to the University of Florida. Today in camp, USC offered Westwood defensive back Cam Smith, and we'll have more on him later tonight at SportsTalkSC.com, but very interested and very excited about getting the USC offer. And the Citadel is picking up a defensive back transfer from Georgia State. Ron Peterkin will play his senior year for the Dogs.
Madison Stokes, Matt Kenseth, and maybe a little surprise for you in the second hour.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network here as we continue to monitor the Major League Baseball first-year player draft. Clemson commit Adam Hackenberg goes off the board in the 39th round to the Kansas City Royals. I also saw, Corn, where the Texas Rangers selected somebody who was listed as a third baseman out of the University of Michigan, Shea Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So not only can Shea Patterson transfer away from Ole Miss, he can go inside the Major League Baseball first-year player draft and perhaps get a pay deal from the Rangers if he wants to.
39th round?
Yes.
Probably not going to get a whole lot. I think he thinks his future's in football at Michigan.
You could do that Russell Wilson thing.
Yeah.
Where he plays or does a little bit.
But you know what? We see more often than not these baseball-football combo guys, they come running back to football.
It's because they get their money.
A few years in the minors. Well, I mean, they just find out that baseball is such a finite set of skills that you have to master to get to the majors and move on through the minors. And the guys like Hayden Hurst, I mean, he gave it a couple of years and realized, I'm not going anywhere here. I'm a big guy and I've got really good football skills. Let's see if I can go make it there. And voila, it turned out great.
Everybody can't be Bo Jackson.
Right.
And the draft is over, folks.
Hallelujah.
It is over. Among those from USC not drafted who were draft eligible, TJ Hopkins, Sawyer Bridges, Jacob Olson, Danny Blair, Chris Cullen, among those who were.
Got to believe Hopkins would have been drafted had it not been for the injury situation. I mean, but you know what? He's a QB, right?
Yes.
So he can come back. That gives you, if you figure they're going to lose Cortez in right field, maybe Olson will come back. That'll give you your left fielder, your center fielder back if they can get Hopkins healthy, which you figure they can. You heard Coach Kingston tell us last night on the show, all those guys taken in the first 10 rounds he expects to sign and not return. Tolbert, what round was he?
He was in the teens, I believe.
13.
Yeah.
That might be good enough for him to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, the seniors are all gone. So there'll be a little bit of rebuilding to be done for that everyday lineup.
We have come into some audio, gentlemen, of the former head football coach of the University of South Carolina, Steve Spurrier. He was in Greenville today to promote not only his new book, but also his brand new gig in the Alliance of American Football, speaking to the South Carolina Football Hall of Fame. Here's a little bit of the taste of I guess, the departed football coach of South Carolina.
Well, it's a little bit like that, but if somebody said, what would get you back in coaching, I'd say, well, maybe a part-time coaching gig like this. We basically work 4 months, 4 to 5, and practice a month and play the next 3 months. 10-game season, hopefully 2 playoff games. So it's just all coaching, competing, getting a bunch of guys and coaches and trying to beat the other guy and trying to win the Alliance Championship. So that'll be a fun thing to do. Really looking forward to it.
When they approach you on it, I mean, how long did you have to think about it? And then,
well, when I heard the deal, all right, here's the deal. Got a TV contract with CBS. They're going to pay the coaches and players decent. There's a little bit of money in it, nothing like the NFL, but it shouldn't be. And we're not trying to compete with the NFL. We'll take the players that didn't make the NFL, and there's plenty of quality players, as we all know, that might be out there playing. Taj Boyd may be there. Who knows? So Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow, I mean, these guys are really outstanding players, and for some reason or another, they're not in the NFL. So we think we can put a quality product out there. We're going to try to play the game a little faster, 30 seconds in between plays instead of 40. No kickoffs. Going to try to make it as injury safe as possible. No extra points. Got to go for 2 every time. So it's going to be a little different. And we think the fans will like it. We're trying to get a 2.5-hour game instead of some of those 4.5-hour games. So some new rules, and I think it's a good concept. It'll be very competitive and should last a long time.
Are you going to be calling plays?
Yeah, I'm going to try to coach just like I coached at Florida and most of the time at South Carolina and all the time at Duke. And yeah, I want to get back to doing some things like we were very successful doing back in the 90s and in the 2000s. But anyway, we'll have a good staff, as will all the teams, and hopefully it'll be a product that people on television will watch.
Have you started working on the staff?
A little bit.
Johnson said maybe he might be
A little bit. Oh, let me tell you, every coach that's coached for a long time that's not coaching right now, they want to hook on with the team. So there's plenty of coaches, just like there's plenty of players that I think we can put a quality game on for the football fans.
Did you are you in a situation where you'll put the roster together after NFL camps?
Yeah.
Their roster?
Basically, the rosters of all the teams will be after the NFL cuts. Every team's got about 90 players right now, 32 teams. So there's over 900 players that will be available for our Alliance League here. So it's we think American people will watch a good football game February, March, and April.
When was the last time you were in the Greenville area, and what's it like for you to come back here and be a part of this speaker series?
Yeah, it's nice. Harry Day invited me to come speak, and I'm actually on the way up to the reserve at Lake Kiowee. I play with a good friend of mine, Rick Veith, every year in the member guest. We haven't done well lately, but we've won our flight a few times 4 or 5 years ago. So it's sort of an annual thing, and the speaking deal tonight worked in right according to that.
Did you get a certain satisfaction last week when the SEC passed the rule now that lets a graduate transfer go anywhere? Because you were kind of ahead of the game. You never blocked a guy from doing something.
I never blocked anybody. I said, you can go anywhere you want to. I remember Brock Berlin wanted to transfer to Miami, and I said, that's fine. They had a deal down there. You couldn't go to FSU or Miami in-state, but in any conference they wanted to. We had a kid went to Vanderbilt. No, I don't understand why we try to block players from transferring if they want to go.
That is the former head coach of South Carolina, Mr. Steve Spurrier. I didn't know that question was next. I would have loved to hear the answer to that question if we can get it back. But
you want me to answer it for you? But that's fine. Coach Dabo's done a great job. Couldn't beat me in 5 years in a row. I think it's 5 years in a row. I think we beat him, but he's done a good job.
He's not. I think you need work on your Spurrier imitation. Here he is. Here's the question. Here's the answer to that question about the relationship with Dabo.
No, I don't understand why we try to block players from transferring if they want to go.
How's your relationship with Dabo involved, and what do you think of the job he's doing?
Oh, he's done an excellent job. In fact, I was talking earlier, he and Will Muschamp
excellent job.
Both done super jobs. I think both of the major universities in the state of South Carolina are in good hands with both those guys. So, but Dabo, he's a national player. There's no question about it. They've built facilities there, and he and his staff have done a super job recruiting and coaching. So looks like they're going to be there a long time. And we think South Carolina's on the way getting up there with them.
Do you think Gamecock fans who hated Spurrier for walking out on the season have forgiven him?
No. I mean, I don't think they have. I think they have,
because if they look at where this program was when he got here and he attached his name to it, it was like attaching a skirt to a runaway
Well, you
kite.
remember when they had him here for the spring game, there was a lot of people who were almost like, why are we welcoming this guy back?
You look at the video that we got that from Pete Yanity at Channel 7. Spurrier hasn't aged a lick. Now, I don't know if, he's tightening the skin, coloring the hair. I mean, the hair is that kind of sandy. It's still that sandy with a little bit of salt and pepper.
He didn't look as young before he got here versus when he left. I think that part of it aged a little bit.
I think the guy is aging gracefully. And I think getting back into football is going to extend his life, because this guy was not meant for being an ambassador for a team and sitting in an office and shaking. One thing he really, I don't want to speak for him, just my experience around him over his, 10, 11 years. He's not a handshaker. He's not a guy that likes to be out in a crowd of supporters backslapping and telling stories,
But he does like attention now a little bit.
Well, he's got an ego. Well, you heard him talking about the golf. I mean, the guy is still extremely competitive at everything he does, like this little golf match he's going to play in. But he looks great. That's the thing. And I guess the knee surgeries and all that and the whatever things he had replaced are working well, and he's able to move well.
We're going to call back a story that we brought you yesterday, or at least a discussion we brought you yesterday, because there is a development involving that. And also we'll hear from Matt Kenseth at Darlington for his tire test earlier today. Stick around. Sports Talk continues.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Did you see this last night in the Padre game? The woman who caught the foul ball in her beer and then chugged it after the insistence from the fans around her?
I did not.
It's pretty cool. The video, I'll have to post it on Sports Talk's Twitter account.
They used to have beer ball games when I was in college.
There were 2 more Clemson commitments to be drafted.
Here she is.
Adam Hackenberg, catcher, 39th round by the Royals, and left-hander Justin Rubleski, Mariners, in the 36th round. It's 2 more Tiger signees drafted. We'll have Monty Lee with us tomorrow night. Is that Thursday?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll have Monty Lee with us tomorrow night, 7:05, and he can fill us in on the draft and how it's going to impact his team moving forward.
Yeah, and Mark Kingston told us yesterday, if you don't remember for us, you can go back and listen to it at SportsTalkSC.com. He believed that those in the first 10 were the ones that are basically all going in. So the guys like Adam Hill, Carlos Cortez, Cody Morris, those guys he thinks are as good as gone for the good. And again, some that were taken earlier today, and again, they had 10 overall. So we'll see how that impacts them going forward. One person who was not taken, and somebody we talked about yesterday, the former Oregon State pitcher Luke Heimlich. We were speculating about whether or not he might go. He did not.
Yep.
40 rounds.
I guess his baggage was too much for anybody to deal with. Maybe he'll sign as a free agent. He is a senior. And, I mean, he is a baseball talent, but the thing against him is awfully tough for people to ignore. I thought somebody would take a flyer on it and pick him, but I guess not. Well, I guess today's social climate and what he's accused of doing, what he's admitted to doing, though now he says, he refutes what he admitted to. It's just too dangerous, too risky.
The only other thing I can think just off the top of my head he can do, and we don't know whether your past follows you everywhere now because of the internet, but maybe they'll take a flyer over him in Japan.
Oh, I would think not.
Why not?
Well, I mean, Japan's society is even
more conservative than ours.
Exactly. I would think not.
I mean, this is the thing. This is not about the man's abilities. It's about the man's past off the field. And you guys are older than me. I don't know if there's anybody who has ever had to deal with something this, I don't know what the word is.
Heinous?
I don't even want to say heinous, but something as socially unacceptable, something that he is accused of as socially unacceptable as this attached to his name. Also still able to walk the streets, being able to do that. No one has had this on their ledger to deal with. And rightly or unrightly, he is basically saddled with this, I think, now for eternity.
Yeah, no question about it. Oh, I just see something else that we had not mentioned. Just ran across it, though. USC signee Wesley Clark, a catcher. He was drafted in the 40th round by, is that Milwaukee? I think it's Milwaukee. Yeah, Wes Clark, 40th round, Milwaukee. Just see that.
No relation to the former Gamecock basketball player of the same name.
I don't think so.
No. It's different spelling on the last name. You were at Darlington today.
Darlington, always loved going to Darlington. Saw KT, all the folks there. Nice media turnout for a little press conference with a couple of drivers after they were out in the middle of doing some testing. They tested in the morning and they took a break, came and talked to us, went back on the track, as I mentioned. We had a chance to talk to Matt Kenseth, the old veteran who's back driving for Roush Racing now. He was going into kind of a semi-retirement, but now he's in a situation where he's a semi-driver, so to speak. And he talked about what it was like testing those tires today at Darlington.
Yeah, I mean, Goodyear kind of, you just give them your feedback and run their tires, and they kind of figure it out from there. As far as team stuff, we're just, they're looking through data, and plus we're trying to find a car balance, and we're trying to find speed, and just looking at all those same things you do when you test.
Having run here as often as you have in the past, do you take your experiences from years past and apply them to the new tire test, or is it just an entirely different run altogether?
No, I mean, certainly you apply the experience you have, with the racetrack and, how to get around it, do things like that. But every day's a new day. The rules change a lot. The cars change a lot. So you just you have to adapt.
Getting back in the race car and having an opportunity to run with Roush Fenway this year?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, we haven't quite had the results I was hoping to have early on, but we have been, I feel like, moving forward slowly but surely. So hopefully we can continue that.
You talked earlier to the television folks about Kansas was just a nightmare for you, and you're slowly getting better. Where are you seeing maybe the most improvement right now?
Oh man, it's just a lot of little things. Like every day, we're just trying to do little things a little bit better, and a lot of that, starts with me or includes me too. So just a bunch of little things. I can't really tell you one thing or two things or three things. It's just trying to do all the little things better and make sure we got everything buttoned up.
Golfers like to say it's not an easy sport to drop and then pick back up later on. How about NASCAR racing? How difficult is it to assimilate it back in after you've been off for a few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's a team sport. I really don't think that being off for a few months has really necessarily hurt my driving, although after a couple weeks you're certainly a little more comfortable. But I think the biggest thing with that, honestly, is not just driving the race car, but just getting used to a new team, crew chief, engineers, way they do things, things they do or don't do that, where you're at before. Just trying to get used to all that and get all that up to speed is by far the biggest part.
During your time away, did you get a chance to maybe look outside the box at NASCAR and look at some of the issues that people talk about with the sport and draw some conclusions and some opinions of your own about what's going on in your profession?
Well, that was a pretty vague question with just what's going on. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I watched some races. I can't say I'd be lying if I told you I watched them all or watched all of them in entirety or any of that stuff. But paid a little bit of attention, probably more attention once I knew I was going to come back and do this. But other than that, I really didn't, I'd say, necessarily watch every week. We had a lot going on. We're having a lot of fun with family and spent some time doing other things.
A lot of people are, especially people who follow the sport, are writing sort of its death notice because of declining this, declining that, the competition, only 2 or 3 drivers winning on a regular basis. Do you see it that way?
Well, I will tell you one thing that I've learned being a sports fan in general, and even reading the news, is over 90% of it is negative. It's like when you read a review on the internet or you want to read, and I don't know when that changed. If it's the social media age, if it's the digital age, I don't know when it is. When I started racing, they had I think they called it the Winston Cup scene at the time you picked it up. You didn't have negative articles in there. It talked about the racing and like what happened. It reported news as fact. And what went on and all that stuff, and that's been a drastic change the last 10 or 15 years, and I really don't know why. You can have the best race in the world, and somebody will pick out something to write, the one thing they can think that's negative to go with it, and it's just unfortunately kind of the way it is. Kind of the way it is with the news in the world right now as well. It's hard to find positive, feel-good stories, that's for sure. So I think there's a lot of great things about NASCAR racing. Certainly, it's changed through the years, and it's different. There's been a lot of format changes. There's been a lot of change, obviously, but there's a lot of good about it too.
Are you still optimistic about the future?
For me?
Well, of the sport.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't say I spend a lot of time thinking about that, to be honest with you. So I don't obviously work for NASCAR and control any of that. So, I don't know that my opinions on really any of the stuff really matter. But I've watched some of the races I did watch were really good races this year, really entertaining. Bristol was an awesome race. I mean, there was a bunch of them that were great races. So I know there's constant talk and chatter about, restrictor plates and rules packages and closer racing and this and that and other thing. But the racing has been pretty good. Like the few that I watched, I thought the racing was really good. And, so I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what everybody wants.
That is Matt Kenseth here on Sports Talk. He spoke honestly, but also towed the company line a little bit.
He's a deep thinker. You can tell that. And he just doesn't react off the cuff to a particular questions. And he's not a guy that really says a lot, doesn't talk a whole lot. He's quiet. I mean, he's a former champion. He's a former winner at Darlington, former Southern 500 winner. He's got quite a resume. And I think people were surprised when things worked out the way they did the end of last year, that all of a sudden he was without a ride and was kind of forced into a retirement.
Your recruiting note real quick?
Yeah, real quick. Clemson this evening at camp offered defensive back Jalen Phillips, part of that outstanding defensive team secondary at Archer High in Lawrenceville. Georgia USC has also offered him, but the Gamecocks are not on his short list, but Clemson is.
We will come back with SC Wild. Captain Billy Downer from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources joins us next. Sports Talk.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
And welcome into another edition of SC Wild here on Sports Talk. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, our studios in downtown Columbia. And we are welcomed via the phone line by Captain Billy Downer of the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. On the road tonight, but with us in full throat and full attention on this Wednesday night. Good evening, Captain. How are you?
Good evening, Phil. Thank you for the introduction.
Good to have you. Where are you tonight?
I am actually back. I'm just back in South Carolina. We were at a conference with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. So I was on the road and not able to get to Columbia to the studio tonight. So thank you for allowing me to phone in.
Any way we can get you on the air is a good thing.
Of course it is. And we've got some good stuff to talk about tonight. Stripers, Phil. Stripers, not strippers.
I did. Wait a minute. Where are you going with that?
I'm not. Just making the joke back at you. You were comment back to, I said, we're going to talk about stripers tonight. You said, what kind?
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the striper fishing tonight. A couple different things. We've got some changes in our striper law, which is going to entail a lot of information tonight. So, folks, if you're listening, just bear with us. Let's try to get some information out because a lot of people don't know that our striper law has changed.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's do a little striper fishing report. One of my good friends, a retired DNR officer, Linwood Kearse from Lake Murray, giving me a report that the quote-unquote football season has begun on Lake Murray.
It's good to know.
Football, you know what football season means when he says that, Phil?
That means big fish?
No, small fish. The football-sized stripers, about 3 to 5 pounds, are tearing it up from what he says on Lake Murray. They're schooling in the morning on jigs, calling jigs at the mouth of Lighthouse Landing back to Jura Island. Remember, this is the big thing. This time of the year, from June 1st through September 30th, you can only keep the first 5 fish you catch, and then you've got to go. So you can't keep fishing. So you catch 5 fish, put them in the boat, and you've got to get on. So that's the rule right now. He calls it football season on the lake because so many small stripers are out there, and they're easy to catch, a lot of fun. Good eating fish, too, so that size.
So I was going to ask you, so that's considered 3 to 5 pounds for a striper is considered small?
Yes, that's considered small.
Gotcha.
You start getting up to like Lake Mary when you've got your different size, your limits when it used to be, in the 23, 25, or 25-inch, 26-inch fish, you're starting to get way over 5 pounds. You get them to 8 to 10.
Gotcha.
Nicer fish. So smaller fish, real smaller. Typically in stripers, people that cook striper know there's that lateral line, which is a line that is in the fish. It's a dark meat. Typically, people cut that out because it's strong tasting. And that's also where mercury tends to kind of, people think, feel like mercury tends to get in that area of the fish more than others, so we try to cut that out.
Mm-hmm.
But the smaller fish don't have a very big red line, so it's a lot easier to cut that out. Good white meat.
What's your recipe for cooking striper?
Striper?
Yeah.
Very simple. Cut bite-sized pieces, put it in house archery, medium hot seafood batter or just regular seafood batter, and put it in the fryer.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be out of this world. Medium hot gives a little bit of a kick to it. Really good batter. I like that for stripers. I like that for saltwater fish. It's just a good batter all the way around. That is the medium hot house archery.
We need Captain Downer's cooking school.
Yeah,
to be
I like
I
it.
know. We keep talking about that, Will. We got to do that. I'm going to get on that in the next few weeks. I promise. I keep talking about it, but we'll make that happen.
But you prefer your striper in bite-size portions, not in large.
No,
Fillet.
bite-sized portions, right?
Yeah.
Because when you do larger pieces of striper, they get thick. You tend to get really soaked in grease because it takes too long to fry them. If you do bite-sized pieces of fish, a lot of times you can fry them a lot quicker, and the fish will be crispier.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody likes a wet, soggy piece of fish.
True that.
You want it nice and crisp and hot when you get it off. And let's be honest, fish is good right out the fryer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good when you sit it up for 30 minutes waiting on everybody to get ready to eat, getting everything out. It's best when you pull it right out of there. One more fishing report for Clarks Hill, Old Lake Thurman. Rodney Cutter, another officer we got, told me the early morning bite on what they call the party fish. Same thing as the football fish on Lake Murray. But the party fish, 3 to 5 pound stripers, and hybrids is strong on live bait. On Clarks Hill, the limit is 10, with only 3 over 26 inches in length. So a few bigger fish, she said, are being caught on live bait on Lake Hartwell. That's the upper part of the state. So let's talk about the new striper law for a minute, because this, a lot of folks didn't know this has come in. Our new striper law, basically, we can read a few little pieces about that. Anglers planning to fish for striped bass anywhere in the Santee River system, that's the Santee River system, between now and June 15th need to be aware of recent changes enacted by South Carolina lawmakers that will affect both the size of legal striped bass they can keep and the time period during which legal size fish can be kept. We always encourage anglers to practice good catch and release methods to minimize stress from releasing undersized striped bass, particularly when water temperatures remain above 70 degrees. That's why on Lake Murray they chose to do the first 5 fish, because people pull those fish up from the deep water into the colder water, into the warm water, and then a lot of times those fish, when you release them, they won't make it. So that's how the first 5 there on Lake Murray is kind of thinking on that. But on Lake Marion, the Santee River system, basically encouraging fish, encourage you to put fish that are undersized back. There is a size limit on striped bass on the Lake Marion, Lake Moultrie, and the Santee River system. The changes to the state law, which were signed by Government Master on May 3rd and effective immediately, so it's a little different. That was in effect last month, and folks didn't know this. The word got out, but not quite as fast as it probably needed to. So it stipulates this, that within the boundaries of the Santee River system, including Lakes Marion and Moultrie, from October 1st through June 15th. So October 1st through June 15th. So we're in that time frame right now until June 15th. It is unlawful to take or possess a striped bass less than 23 inches or greater than 25 inches, provided that one striped bass taken or possessed may be greater than 26 inches. So a little bit of information here. So right now, your fish, you have to have between 23 and 25. You can catch 3 of them. One of them can be over 26 inches now. The other 2 have to be between 23 and 25 inches. So the changes of the law affect the following areas. Folks wondering kind of where does this affect me? The areas of Lake Marion and Lake Moultrie to the Santee River, that's including the Santee River, from Lake Moultrie down to the saltwater dividing line, upstream from Lake Marion, Santee River, all the way up to the dam at Lake Murray on the Saluda, and all the way up to the Watery Dam on the Watery River, and then also to the diversion dam on the Broad River. So all of these areas are affected by this new, the new size catch limit, basically in the time frame. Again, the time frame is from October 1st through June 15th. October 1st to June 15th. So you can have 3 fish, and they can be between 23 and 25 inches. One can be greater than 26 inches.
So let me ask you this real quick before the break. Why was this law necessary?
Well, that's a good question. And actually, after the break, I'll probably get a little bit more detail. But basically, our fishery file has been looking at the striped bass at that fishery, and they've noted a downturn a little bit in some of what we call the smaller fish, the breeder-sized fish. So they constantly are looking at what's the right, particularly in the Santee River system, because that's where originally striped bass were. They come from the ocean, they lay their eggs and spawn in the river system, and they went back to the ocean. When we created Lake Marion and Lake Moultrie, the Santee River Lake system, it was the first known landlocked striped bass population that actually for some time continued to go upstream and spawn and then come back into the lake. And they couldn't necessarily go down to the ocean. And now they have put in the fish lift, and some fish may go through that down on Lake Moultrie. But that's where we're at right now as far as it's trying to look after this fishery to make sure these fish can continue to propagate on their own.
All right, hang on, Captain. We'll come back to you after the break. It is SC Wild here on Sports Talk, starring the captain, Billy Downer. Coming up, some more on boating. He's got some words of wisdom for you there. For those of you on the lakes, we'll be right back.
It's time to get wild with SC Wild. Everything hunting and fishing from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and your host, Phil Kornblut. SC Wild on Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Talking stripers tonight here on Sports Talk with the captain, Billy Downer from SCDNR. Also, of course, this time of year, the captain loves to remind you about boating safety, do's and don'ts, and just being alert. And we just had the Memorial Day weekend not too long ago. What'd you think of how people behaved over that weekend?
Well, you know, for the most part, where I was, people behaved pretty well. You're always going to have folks doing some silly things and just not thinking. One of the things we saw a lot, Phil, on the water, and people just don't think about this, but pontoons. People like to sit on the front of a pontoon and let their feet drag in the water while the pontoon is in motion. And sometimes their feet are dragging when the pontoon's going pretty fast. And what they don't understand is if they hit a stump, hit a wake, or anything that would throw them out before the driver can stop, they're going to get run over by the boat. And, of course, anytime that happens, you've got a prop. And props, as we know, don't stop for bone. They don't stop for skin. They don't stop for your body whatsoever. They will cut and slash awfully. And I've been a part of accidents where that's actually happened. Remember one on Lake Marion where a gentleman was on the front actually sitting in a boat in one of the fishing seats, going across a flat and hit a stump and threw him under the boat. And unfortunately, he was cut across the face with a prop. 6 months of surgery later, came out he's okay, but I'm sure he would have rather not gone through that experience. What we call that is negligent operation. That's one of those things, of activities that falls under negligent operation. We did see a little bit of that. You see that all the time on the lakes. People just don't think. They go on the front of the boat and they want to cool their feet off. But if you want to do that, stop the boat, anchor out, and then get in the water. Don't do it while the boat's in motion because too many things can happen. Yes, unfortunately, on Memorial Day weekend, we did have one boating fatality. One is always too many. You hear me say that time and time again. To date, I think we've had 6 so far this year. Not sure where that falls in previous years as far as are we ahead or behind. Of course, I'd like to see no more accidents. One of the things that we talk about when we look at accidents and look back on those and investigate those, try to remind folks the boating basics. And one of the things that comes out time and time again in our accidents is life jackets. And you hear us talk about it. I know people probably get sick of hearing about it, but honestly, it's the easiest thing you can do to stay alive in the water. Make sure you have enough life jackets on board the boat for everybody on board. Make sure they fit the intended users on board. Don't have adult life jackets for children. Nothing is more of a pet peeve for an officer than seeing a young child in an adult life jacket or an adult trying to show that that's the life jacket for that child, because it's simply not going to work. When they hit the water, they're going to pop out of it, and that's not a good thing. When you need a life jacket in an accident, if you're thrown from the boat or the boat tips over, there's a bad accident, you're floating, you need to be able to float. You don't need to be able to have to struggle in the water. So having a life jacket that fits is important. Making sure it's in serviceable condition, the third thing. Make sure if you have to use it, it doesn't have rips and tears and doesn't fall apart on you. Check your life jackets every year before the boating season to make sure you've got good life jackets that are in working order. And then make sure, most importantly, they're where you can get to them. Too many times we check boats, you hear me say this still over and over again, we check a boat and the life jackets are locked up in a compartment somewhere and they've got to get a key to get them out to show them to us. That's not going to do you any good if you need the life jackets in an emergency, because you may not be able to find the key. Have the life jackets out where you can get to them. And one more simple thing is wear it. If you're going to and from where you want to be on the water, wear that life jacket. Now, wearing your life jacket is not the law, except if you are riding a PWC or jet ski, you're required to wear one. Or if you're under the age of 12 on a boat under 16 foot in length, you're required to wear one. But outside of that, you're not required to. But it's a good idea. If you're in motion, put a life jacket on, just like putting a seatbelt on. In case something happens, you got a life jacket, you're ready to go if something happens. Small children, all the time we talk about this, and unfortunately we've seen this in accidents too, where children, the infants are thrown from a boat during an accident, and they're not wearing a life jacket because they may have been on a boat big enough. If it's over 16 foot in length, technically you don't have to have a life jacket. But for those of us that have had 2-year-olds in the home, you know they can get out from under your feet pretty quick. And they can walk up under a rail and jump in the water before you know it. So put those infants, those toddlers in life jackets, no matter if they're required to have them on or not. It's just a good idea. Again, use common sense on the water. Have your life jackets ready. A lot of times our actions involve drownings, and even though they sometimes may not be boating related, a life jacket could have saved a life every time.
Don't you find that just on the water, people on their boats, whatever, their watercraft, they just sort of let their guard down? Because it's not like driving the car. You're driving the car down the street. You're somewhat supposedly alert, paying attention because you're driving a car. You're on the boat. You're on the water. You got all this space in front of you. You know, the nearest boat might not be 50 feet, 100 feet near you. And you just sort of relax and let your guard down, and you're enjoying the great outdoors. Maybe you're having a beer or two, and you basically just let your guard down.
Sure, absolutely. And we actually have a term for that called the lake effect for folks on the water. We talked about that on several shows, and it's worth mentioning here. When you're out in the water, you're in the sun, the heat of the sun, outside, the action of the boat, the kind of the rolling note, that kind of dull noise of that engine constant noise, that background noise, will actually lower your systems. It's a scientific fact. And you're right, Phil, on the road, we're sitting there, we're between the white line and stripe line, and we're making sure we're staying out of the lane of oncoming traffic. On the water, you feel like you're on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact of the matter is a boat won't stop as fast as a car because you're on the water. You don't have brakes. You've got to basically cut off the throttle, and then a lot of times you lose steerage when you get slower like that. So you've got to keep aware, be aware of boats around you, be aware of other folks. You're right. You may be out there and nobody boats you within 100 feet of you, and all of a sudden here comes somebody around a corner, and they're right on you. You've got to make a quick judgment. So absolutely staying attentive on the water. If you're the captain of the boat, keep a proper lookout. Always maintain that proper lookout. Be expecting the unexpected, particularly when you go around curves on a river or on a lake. Be expected the unexpected to come around that corner so you can prepare to react to it. And again, I'd always say this. When you're pulling skiers or when you're pulling somebody on a tube, be mindful of those tubes when they fall off, that they are, they're in the water floating low, and if it's choppy at all, other boats may not see them. And we tell boaters, too, to remember that. And so always watch out, get back to those tubers as fast as you can, and just be mindful of those boating and tubing around you.
All right, last minute here with you tonight. Temperatures going up. What's that gonna mean for fishermen?
Well, as it gets hotter, of course, as water temperatures rise, fishing activity will typically drop off. When it gets really, really hot, like we talked about, stripers are down deep. When it's cooler, right now they're still apparently they are still schooling on Lake Murray, so they're at the top in the mornings. Again, when it's cooler, but they'll be down in the bottom, so you might have to go deeper for fish when it's colder, or the cooler water is for those fish. Your shellcracker and your flatfish right now, your brim, they'll be biting as it gets warm now on your lakes, back in backwater areas under the trees in the shade. You'll see those shellcracker and brim biting, of course, all over from Low Falls on Lake Marion all the way down to Jacks Creek and up to Lake Murray as well. So fishing activity will continue, will slow down. The coast, of course, this time of year is starting to pick up. As the water warms up on the coast, saltwater fishing gets really well. When it gets that 100-degree temperatures in these backwater sloughs and where the water gets really low during low tide, your fishing activity is going to slow there again. But again, finding those deep holes where those fish congregate in that cooler water is the key.
Real quick, speaking of the beach, are we expecting another summer of numerous shark attacks? You think maybe we're going to have another summer like that?
Absolutely not. We haven't had numerous shark attacks ever. I love the way you just completely blew that out.
Corn would never exaggerate now.
Well, you sound like the mayor of what was the place, the beach in Jaws?
Jaws,
yeah.
Amityville, whatever it was.
Yeah. No, that was the Amityville Horror.
Well, it was something, whatever that beach was. Yeah, it's.
Come on in. The water's fine.
In the past, we've had maybe one shark attack or two shark attacks, or shark bites, not shark attacks. Mistaken identity, shark bites, let's go. Nobody wants to be on the end of that, of course. But again, remember we talked about that. When you're in shallow water on the beach, don't wear rings or flashy things like that would cause a shark to mistake you for a fish.
Okay. Thank you, Captain. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, sir.
Captain Billy Downer, SC Wild.
Don't wear your anklet when you're
I guess I
in
won't.
Garden City.
You mean my police anklet, my identification?
No, I don't think those are waterproof.
Yeah. I think there's been a few more of those things, and he's leading on to here.
I'll see you tomorrow.